House of the Dragon is going to have a Daenerys Targaryen shaped problem, and I think the writers are all too aware of it. It's not so much the character of Daenerys herself that's the issue. She's beloved by many fans, and by far one of the most popular elements of Game of Thrones, even to this day. It's easy to see why. Emilia Clarke did a phenomenal job bringing her to life, and her role was so central to the plot of the show, given she was, after all, the mother of dragons. And then we get to Season 8. I'm not going to waste your time by rehashing the main glaring issues fans rightly have brought up about the show's disappointing final season, but what I will say is this. The reaction to Game of Thrones' last season was so universally disliked and held in such disdain, it very well could have killed Song of Ice and Fire's TV universe. It's frankly amazing the first season of House of the Dragon managed to recover some of the damage and bring back a large part of that lost audience. It speaks to how good Season 1 of House of the Dragon is in comparison to the last season of Game of Thrones, that it was able to salvage the franchise to some degree. But the spectre of Season 8 will always loom over House of the Dragon, with things like the inclusion of Aegon's prophecy, and very specifically Daenerys' storyline and her ultimate fate, causing a huge shadow. Now, the issue so many have with Daenerys in Season 8 of Game of Thrones is how poorly her fall to madness was handled, how fast it seemed to happen, and how little setup it had over the course of the final season, with it seemingly happening over a single episode prior to her ultimate fall. Arguments can be made that there were clues in prior seasons, but not near enough nor frequently enough to make her going mad seem like a natural conclusion or really form a cohesive story, with it seemingly happening out of nowhere over 1 or 2 episodes, with this ultimately resulting in the now infamous Belle scene and her death at the hands of Jon Snow, who was persuaded to kill his lover by Tyrion because she had apparently gone mad, and a threat to not only Jon's family but the whole world. It's easy to see why this irked so many viewers and has become one of the most commonly cited reasons fans disliked Season 8. Don't get me wrong, I too really did not like Season 8, and it did almost kill my love for A Song of Ice and Fire. It took my obsession with Fire and Blood and the expanded lore to rekindle my love for the world. If anything, this YouTube channel, at the start, was kind of a Song of Ice and Fire therapy for me, helping me remember what I loved so much about George R.R. Martin's work. Of course, while there are elements to the ending I don't mind so much, such as the actual concept of Daenerys becoming a mad tyrant, the way the show chose to execute this was poor and badly set up. Before I carry on, I am now going to be talking about the events that will happen in House of the Dragon Season 3 and onwards. So if you are a show-only fan and don't want to know what's going to happen, here's your warning. So how does all this relate back to House of the Dragon and the point of this video? Well, we can see how fans reacted to a fan-favourite character going mad and dying at the end of her story, and frankly, Rhaenyra Targaryen's fate, another fan-favourite character, has many parallels to that of Daenerys's. It's not hard to see at all why the writers of House of the Dragon would be worried about the reaction to Rhaenyra's storyline, given how closely it resembles Daenerys' fate. Well, at least on the surface anyway. They would rightly be concerned after working so hard to restore faith in the Game of Thrones brand with House of the Dragon that all of that could be undone, given the storyline and fate of Rhaenyra. In fact, when I first saw Season 8 of Game of Thrones, I had just finished reading Fire and Blood for the first time, and I could see some parallels between the fate of Daenerys and that of Rhaenyra, and thought maybe Benioff and Weiss had taken inspiration from Rhaenyra when writing Daenerys in Season 8. When House of the Dragon was first announced, this problem really didn't jump out at me. It was only after the first episode aired, with the intro text about Daenerys, I first started to contemplate this issue. One of the biggest criticisms of Season 2 of House of the Dragon I have seen made by some fans is that the writers don't appear to be moving Rhaenyra along her story progression of beginning to be more and more emotionally damaged and her mental state declining, as it does so in the book, with accusations that the House of the Dragon writers are removing or minimizing this element of Rhaenyra's story due to the backlash of Daenerys' similar progression and ultimate fate. That the writers are concerned about the reaction to Rhaenyra's fall to madness and her death towards the end of the House of the Dragon's story, and the possible resurfacing of the backlash given to Game of Thrones Season 8. Now in truth, I do believe fans have jumped the gun a little bit here. and that Rhaenyra is not quite that far along in her story to really make that claim. Really, her paranoia and declining mental state start to kick in after Jace is killed at the Gullet, and Aegon almost is killed, with Viserys presumed dead. Throw in the mistrust of the Dragon Seas on top of that, the fall of the Dragon Pit and the death of Joffrey, then the show hasn't even started to scratch the surface of Rhaenyra's mental health storyline yet. Given what Season 2 is covering in terms of book plot, I never expect to start to see her mental decline yet. Now, if we get halfway through Season 3 and no progress has been made, then yeah, maybe I'd be more worried. But it's such a huge part of not only Rhaenyra as a character, but how the final stages of the story take shape as a whole. To change this element would be to fundamentally change the story being told. I do think there have been a few moments that could be looked back upon as the writers starting to set this up, with say Rhaenyra slapping Lord Bartimer's counter-guy in episode 6, and her general sense of isolation all season, maybe leading to mistrust of her allies, which you can almost kind of see with her sending Sir Alfred Broom to Harrenhal. And of course, she does have genuine reason to question Daemon's loyalties at this stage, and you could make an argument that this too could be used as setup for her paranoia down the line into Season 3 onwards. The spectre of Daenerys and her parallels to Rhaenyra is going to be an issue that the writers are keenly aware of, given the discourse around the damage Season 8 of Game of Thrones caused. Because of that, I think they'll be taking great care to ensure that that part of the story is told correctly, with enough proper setup to ensure that despite how unhappy it makes some fans to see their favourite character's demise, it is done in a way that's satisfying, a way in which cannot be said about Daenerys. I do also think there is one key fundamental difference that will make Rhaenyra's fate versus Daenerys's much more palatable. When we were watching Game of Thrones Season 8 for the first time, if we ignore the fact the entire plot leaked online months before, most fans had no idea what was going to happen, given that by that point in time, we were out of source material for the writers to draw from. Therefore, the fate of the characters were much more of a surprise to book fans and show fans alike. With Rhaenyra and her death at the end of the Dance of the Dragons, it's something that has been firmly established in lore before any of the TV shows were even a thing, and thanks to the expanded works such as Fire and Blood, we know all about Rhaenyra, her life, and the circumstances of her death. Hell, even a lot of show-only fans know she dies at this point, thanks to Joffrey in Game of Thrones Season 4. Thus, for a lot of people, this isn't going to be coming out of the blue like it was with Daenerys in Game of Thrones, and a large amount of fans who are invested enough in the lore to really care are full well expecting what's to come. There of course may well be some fans who still have absolutely no idea, as long as the writers take the time to set all this up and tell the story properly in a way Game of Thrones didn't with Daenerys. I do believe it should be fine. So, Daenerys is a huge issue for the writers of House of the Dragon, but another way to look at it is that she also serves as a warning of the pitfalls of rushing through character development and not setting up your story properly. So I hope this means that the writers of House of the Dragon are all too aware of how lightly they need to tread.